I tell you. Well, I've been getting some videos up or recordings uploaded, uh, and you're probably only gonna kind of like a skipping stone across the smooth surface. I've made all these recordings, but uh, like because of my vision, it was very confused what last few ones I posted, and so trying to keep things moving along. There were some recordings I didn't even bother trying to upload, and uh, I just moved them all out of the camera roll space. So we're good to go for a while. So here we are, May 11th, still seeing 9th, May 11th, 2024. Um, Web 3 and beyond. We've gone so far beyond just Web 3. And you know what? We can start with meme tokens and move towards a utility coin and everything in between. But um, really, really, it's not about NFTs and cryptocurrency. And as I mentioned in some of my other recordings, if you happen to see them, we're not necessarily even talking about blockchain technology. This is why I say things are just whooshing along so friggin' fast because we haven't even gotten used to Web3 yet. But pretty much up to this point, I think we've been thinking of it as only blockchain technology or at least a hybrid. But now we're entering a world, a cloud native world that's not really what we need and what's going on. What we're talking about is a nodal network, a network of nodes that get the effect of decentralization, distributed, and what I'm really excited about, opportunities for parallel computing. Yeah, I've long been very interested in parallel computing. And when I get my developers, I'm putting together a team of Web3 developers. I will want at least one or two of them to drill down on the operating system QNX. I've been keeping an eye on QNX from like the 80s, um, because it was doing that kind of concepts back then. And as I understand it, because one of the reasons why I haven't actually used QNX is because I think it costs like $200 or something. It wasn't free, or if it was free, it wasn't much free. I don't know. It's a more elite operating system. Anyhow, nowadays I guess it's the main operating system for automobiles. So all those little chips you have throughout your automobile, QNX is the operating system, probably. I don't know of any others. So I have no doubt we can learn a lot um, from QNX, because if they weren't talking microservices, then I mean the idea was to have a distributed network, or let me rephrase that: a distributed operating system. QNX is an operating system, so you build apps on top of it. But it's an operating system like rarely is seen in this world. It ain't your grandpappy's operating system. And it's been around for a long, long time. So it should be pretty solid by now if it can be ported, not migrated, but ported to the native cloud. And as the native cloud being our branding for our operating systems, we really can work with that, and it does a lot for us. Because if we can get it working on the native cloud, then we're done. Then it works, right? Whereas there is so much out there and it's changing so fast that if you're too tightly coupled to your implementation, um, well, let's put it this way. The power in the cloud is that if uh, if that kind of power was done with legacy technology, uh, it wouldn't be able to handle it. It would just It just wouldn't be able to handle it because what the game has been for the last 30 years, make it bigger, make it faster. But the technology hasn't changed that much. Mostly we've been getting by with make it bigger, make it faster. It's called the Moore's Law. And I think that's fine. We've been riding it for 30, more than 30 years, because it originated with Intel, which Intel, has been around since like 68. Um, we're going to start reaching limits of scalability. But this new paradigm, this new computing environment can bypass such limitations. It's not that the whole system taken whole isn't still like a mega consumer of power like electricity or data or information, or knowledge like oracles. If I understand what an oracle is supposed to be, they're hoping for it to be what I call a knowledge server. And so I envision the knowledge server. All we have is fancy information servers right now. The human is the intelligence. The human makes the knowledge. Um, then let me say this. The current state of AI cannot be big enough to implement the machine mind I see. Because I suspect more than anyone that would deal with these ideas and developing them, um, the scope required is actually a lot bigger than we imagine. Yet, if we can achieve breaking the scalability barrier there, yeah, it would be explosive. It'd be like E equals MC squared or electricity and I was going to do an entrepreneurial thing, comparing what we got now with the phenomenon of petroleum and Rockefeller with his kerosene and making it into fuel uh, for cars and planes and stuff like that. Um, but you know what the really biggest thing of the last 100 years is? I think, well, I've always been fascinated by material science. I think the neglected science is material science. But I don't think a lot of people realize it's so ubiquitous for so long. But the biggest innovation of the 1920s, and maybe if I was doing a class, I should let some students make a few guesses. It's plastic. Plastic is the biggest innovation of 100 years ago that had driven the next 50 to 100 years. And here we are, we're still with it. But before plastic, there wasn't plastic. Can you imagine a world without plastic? And yes, there's a lot of problems with plastic. But my point is 2024. 2024, jump on it. Geronimo, this is the year. This is the year. This is the fulcrum year. Everything's been leading up to this, but from here on out, within 2, 3 years, everything's going to change. And the US dollar will fail. It will fail at some point. It's kind of like as Bitcoin goes up, and I'm secure with my altcoin portfolio because it's highly influenced by Bitcoin. And and it seems like November is a time that Bitcoin like goes bull past its previous highs, but it does that. And since 2017, as I understand it was doing before that, I've seen that. I started in around 2000 a Bitcoin, and I'm sure it went down to around 1,000, but then it went up to, it goes up kind of bullish. But then this is the pattern. Here at 2,000, it goes up to say 10,000. Oh my God, look how valuable it is. There are millionaires being made because they bought it at 300. Um, and then people get cold feet and pulls back, but it usually doesn't go lower than about half of the gains. And it may take years, but again, like November tends to be a bull. Not sure I'm sure what do they call it? A bull season or an altcoin season? Anyhow, there's supposed to be another altcoin season, but I don't think we've had it yet. And I'm not really sure what months it's supposed to be. Maybe we did. Maybe that was February. But anyhow, I'm holding for November because that's historic at this point. Last 7 years. Oh, I was going to mention that in one of the recordings. Yeah, when you live in the world of crypto, a month is like a year. Time goes very fast. A year is like a decade. So get used to it, deal with it. 11, better bounce.